Summer had finally arrived, and for the first time in my entire life, our house felt completely, almost eerily silent. My mother, Rebecca, had just gotten back from visiting her younger sister upstate, only to dash out again to catch up with an old college friend. My father had departed a week earlier for an extended business assignment overseas, one that would keep him away for a full 2 months. That left me, Daniel, an 18-year-old college freshman home on break, alone in this big, empty house with an entire summer stretched out before me like an open canvas. No assignment deadlines, no lecture halls, no one dictating my schedule or telling me when to wake up. It felt like pure, unfiltered freedom. On that very first day of true solitude, I locked the front door behind me, gathered my sketchbook, a pile of snacks, and my noise-canceling headphones, then dove headfirst into my own creative world. I drew for hours on end, completely losing track of time, filling page after page with ideas and concepts I'd been storing up throughout the entire academic year. Whenever my wrists began to ache from the constant motion, I'd switch over to browsing online art tutorials or exploring design forums, absorbing inspiration like a sponge soaking up water. I was so deeply absorbed in my work that I didn't hear the front door open downstairs. "Daniel, you're still awake?" My mother's voice cut through my concentration, making me jump so suddenly I nearly knocked my glass of juice onto the floor. Yeah. Just working on some drawings," I mumbled, trying to steady my racing heart. She laughed softly, shaking her head with an amused smile. "You're really into this lately. That's wonderful. But you should take a break, sweetheart. Come downstairs. I made fresh lemonade." That evening, we settled together in the living room. No hurry, no background noise. Just the two of us chatting about movies we wanted to watch, summer recipes we should try, and random internet memes that had made us laugh. Moments like these felt increasingly rare, like the calm stillness before life inevitably becomes chaotic again. Over the next week, I experimented with everything I'd always wanted to try but never had the time for. I attempted new recipes I'd bookmarked months ago, conducted weird kitchen science projects that occasionally filled the room with smoke and unusual smells, and binged through documentaries I'd saved on my watch list for what felt like ages. Mom would peek in occasionally, offering practical advice on a recipe, or gently teasing me when one of my experiments failed spectacularly, like the time I tried to make homemade caramel and ended up with something closer to burnt rubber. Our conversations during this time were light, easy, and comfortable. Even the silences we shared felt warm and natural rather than awkward. One particularly sunny afternoon, I decided to drag all my art supplies down to the living room. Mom sat across from me at the coffee table, helping me sort through colored pencils and offering suggestions that were surprisingly insightful. "You really do have an eye for this," she said, studying one of my landscape sketches. "You should seriously think about enrolling in some proper art workshops this fall. Don't let all this talent just sit around collecting dust." Hearing those words, hearing her genuinely see and acknowledge something I was passionate about, meant more to me than I could express in that moment. Our evenings gradually settled into a comfortable routine. We'd pick shows to watch together on streaming services, play competitive board games that sometimes got hilariously intense, and occasionally laugh so hard at inside jokes that we could barely catch our breath. Little by little, the house stopped feeling empty or lonely. Instead, it felt peaceful, safe, and filled with a quiet contentment I hadn't experienced in years. As the weeks continued to pass by, I began noticing subtle changes within myself. I felt more grounded, more responsible, more confident in who I was becoming. I started actively reaching out to old friends I'd lost touch with during the semester, taking regular evening walks around the neighborhood to clear my head, and writing down my goals and aspirations in a journal, things I'd never bothered with during the hectic school term. My mother never pushed me toward any particular direction. She simply supported me quietly from the sidelines, offering guidance when I asked for it and giving me space when I needed it. Somehow, that gentle approach made all the difference in the world. One memorable afternoon, we decided to tackle a project together, repainting the old wooden bench in our backyard that had been weathered by years of rain and sun. We spent hours sanding down the rough edges, carefully applying fresh coats of paint, and talking about everything from her own college experiences to the dreams I was beginning to shape for my future. "You know," she said, dipping her brush into the paint can, "when I was your age, I thought I had everything figured out. But the truth is, nobody really does at 18, or at 25, or even at 45, honestly." "So when does it happen?" I asked, wiping sweat from my forehead. She smiled thoughtfully. "Maybe never completely, but that's not really the point. The point is learning to trust yourself as you figure it out, step by step." That conversation stayed with me long after the paint had dried. There were also quieter moments, mornings when I'd wake up early and find her already in the kitchen, brewing coffee and reading the news on her tablet. I'd pour myself a cup and sit beside her in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange through our kitchen window. "Your father called last night after you went to bed," she mentioned one morning. "He misses you. Asked how you're doing." "I miss him too," I admitted. "But I'm also kinda glad we got this time, just the two of us. Does that sound weird?" "Not at all," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I'm glad too. Sometimes we'd work together on household projects, organizing the garage that had become cluttered over the years, sorting through old photo albums, and reminiscing about family vacations, or tending to the small vegetable garden in our backyard that had been neglected during the busy school year. Each task, no matter how mundane, became an opportunity for connection. We developed a rhythm, an unspoken understanding of how to work side by side without needing to fill every silence with words. One particularly warm evening in late July, we decided to have dinner outside on the back patio. Mom grilled vegetables while I prepared a simple salad, and we ate under the soft glow of string lights we'd hung up together the week before. "I've been thinking," she said, setting down her fork. "This fall, when you go back to school, things are going to get busy again. You'll have new classes, new responsibilities, maybe new relationships. Life has a way of pulling us in different directions." I nodded, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "But I want you to remember this summer," she continued. "Not just the activities or the projects, but the feeling of it. That sense of peace you found, that confidence you built. Those things belong to you now. Nobody can take them away. I won't forget, I promised, and I meant it with every fiber of my being." As we cleared the dishes together later that evening, working in our familiar synchronized pattern, I realized that this summer had given me something far more valuable than just free time or creative projects. It had given me a foundation, a sense of self-worth that wasn't dependent on grades or achievements or external validation. The night before my father was scheduled to return home, Mom and I sat in the living room one final time, just talking in the soft glow of the table lamp. The house felt different now. Not empty or too quiet, but full in a way that had nothing to do with how many people were physically present. "You've grown so much this summer," she said, her voice carrying that gentle, proud tone that only mothers seem to master. "I hope you learned something valuable about taking care of yourself, about independence, and about how much the small, everyday moments actually matter." "I did," I replied honestly. "More than I ever expected to." She smiled, her eyes glistening slightly in the lamplight. "You know, being your mother has taught me just as much as I've tried to teach you. Watching you discover who you're becoming, that's been one of the greatest privileges of my life." We sat there for a while longer, not needing to say anything else, just being present together in that moment. When my father finally walked through the front door the next afternoon, his suitcase rolling behind him and a tired but happy smile on his face, the entire rhythm of the house immediately snapped back to its usual energy, busy, loud, bustling, familiar. "There's my boy," he exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. "Let me look at you. Did you grow taller while I was gone?" "Dad, it's only been 2 months," I laughed. 2 months is plenty of time," he insisted, then turned to kiss my mother. "I missed you both so much. This house was way too quiet without me, wasn't it?" Mom and I exchanged a knowing glance, sharing a secret smile that spoke volumes about the summer we'd shared. Over dinner that night, Dad dominated the conversation with stories from his business trip. The interesting people he'd met, the strange foods he'd tried, the mishaps and adventures that had filled his weeks abroad. It was wonderful having him back, hearing his booming laugh fill the house again, feeling our family unit complete once more. But something fundamental between my mother and me had shifted permanently during those 2 months. We had quietly, almost imperceptibly, built a deeper bond, one born from mutual trust, quality time, and all the small, unremarkable moments we'd shared when the world had slowed down enough for us to truly see each other. As August drew to a close and my return to college loomed on the horizon, I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired. This summer hadn't featured wild adventures or dramatic plot twists. There were no life-threatening situations or romance storylines. Nothing I could easily describe to friends when they inevitably asked, "So, how was your summer?" But it had fundamentally changed me nonetheless. The morning I loaded my car to drive back to campus, Mom helped me carry boxes down the stairs. We worked efficiently, having perfected our teamwork over the summer months. "Remember what we talked about," she said as we loaded the last box into my trunk. "About trusting yourself, about finding peace in the quiet moments." "I remember everything," I assured her. She pulled me into a long hug. "Call me. Not just when something's wrong or you need something. Call me when you're happy, when something small but wonderful happens, when you just want to share your day." "I will. I promise." As I backed out of the driveway, I could see her standing there in the morning sunlight, one hand raised in farewell. The image crystallized in my mind, a picture I knew I'd carry with me through whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead. That summer taught me what real independence feels like, not isolation or loneliness, but the freedom to discover who you genuinely are when all the external pressures and expectations are stripped away. It taught me the immeasurable value of the people who show up for you not with grand gestures but in the simplest, most consistent ways, through shared lemonade on a random Tuesday, through patient conversations about dreams and fears, through quiet support that never demands recognition. Looking back now, months and years later, I realize that summers like that don't come often in a person's life. They're rare gifts, moments suspended outside of normal time where transformation happens so gradually you barely notice it until you've emerged on the other side, fundamentally changed. The sketches I filled that summer still sit in my desk drawer. The recipes we experimented with became some of my go-to meals in my college apartment. The confidence I built during those quiet months carried me through presentations, job interviews, difficult conversations, and moments of self-doubt. But most importantly, the relationship I strengthened with my mother during that time became the blueprint for how I approach all meaningful connections in my life, with patience, presence, and appreciation for the beauty hidden in ordinary moments. Sometimes the quietest days leave the biggest marks on your heart. Sometimes the summers you spend at home, doing nothing particularly remarkable, turn out to be the ones that define you. And sometimes, the greatest adventures are the ones that happen in the spaces between words, in the comfortable silences shared with people who truly see you. That was the summer I learned to be alone without being lonely. The summer I discovered that growth doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. The summer I understood, finally, what it means to be truly at home, not just in a house but in your own skin. And for that gift, I will be forever grateful.